Hi everyone and welcome to today's video. Today I'm reviewing another set of Diamine inks. This is the music set, and this, like the others, comes in a little package set of samples from Pulp here in Australia. Pulp is a really great retailer with a fabulous range of products and inks and pens and all of that, based here in Victoria in Australia. So jump online and check them out. Really competitive prices. They're now a Diamine stocker and have actually some of the best prices for Diamine in Australia, so check them out. Okay, so what comes in this set? Well, there are 10 inks named after famous composers, and I'll show them all in a bit more detail, but just to run through the names, we have Bach, Beethoven, Chopin, Handel, Mozart, Schubert, Strauss, Tchaikovsky, Vivaldi, and Wagner. So 10 big names in the classical music world, which appeals to me, seeing as though my proper job is as an opera singer. And they came here in 2ml sample vials, typical sort of little sample vial here from Pulp. You can see their Handel, Diamine Handel music series, and then Pulp email address. So I'm going to run through each of these inks. I've got them on a few different papers, and we'll show a couple of comparisons from the other Diamine lineup. Let's get started. So I have the inks here on Tomol River paper. This is 68 GSM Tomol River, and when we get to each ink, I'll just show a little color corrected version of it just off to the side here. But yeah, let's get started. So we start with Bach. Bach is a lovely sort of earthy brown colour. It's quite warm, chocolatey, decent sort of shading, and performs really nicely. The next is Beethoven, and this is a lovely foresty green. There's a hint of blue in this green, which I quite enjoy. And once again, decent shading, not as pronounced as some of the other inks in this set. And this set doesn't feature super high sheening inks. This is a more traditional set of inks, and the colours are a little bit sort of more earthy in general. So I've got a nice sort of forest green there in Beethoven. Then Chopin, which is probably the closest to a blue-black, but it's a sort of a coolly blue-grey sort of colour. This has a little bit of sheen on it. I don't know if the camera's going to pick that up, but there's a tiny bit of red sheen on that ink. And once again, the shading when you get it is quite nice, but a lovely writing ink, that one. Then Handel, which is a sort of a dusty pinky mauve sort of colour. Unique. I don't have anything quite like this in my collection from Diamine, but it's a lovely colour, and I think it has some of the nicer shading and is lovely and warm, which is nice to see in sort of a pinky tone. Next we get Mozart, which is like a red-brown. Dark red brown. It's not dissimilar to the Bach. It's just a little bit more red, but a little bit of sort of greeny gold sheen on that, and also just lovely shading. Like these inks, Diamine inks are beautiful shaders in general, I tend to find. Next we get Schubert, with lovely red sheen popping up there. This is like an aqua teal sort of color. It's probably there's a few other inks that are quite similar to this sort of on the market, but it's one of my favorite color families. Beautiful shading as there's some sheen, and just once again a lovely writing ink. Then we get Strauss, and I wasn't able to find which Strauss this is. There are a number of Strausses, as there are a number of Bachs, but I think J.S. Bach is the sort of standard pick there, but this could be either Johann Strauss or Richard Strauss. But whichever Strauss it is, it's a really interesting sort of earthy orange. It's not a burnt orange. It's also not quite like a burnt sienna sort of color. It's a sort of it's a dusty orange, which it's nice. It's a lovely sort of chalky orange color, if that makes sense. Then we get Tchaikovsky, one of the greatest melody writers of the classical world. Lovely blue, nice red sheen on that. Not heaps, but it does show up. Good shading, good performance. We'll see these on other papers as well, of course, but that is the Diamine blues do tend to be quite good. Then the final two inks in the set are Vivaldi, which is another sort of grey-violet colour with a little bit of gold sheen. Excellent shading. Once again, good performance. Diamine are considered some of the safest inks on the market. They really know what they're doing. They've been around for 150 years, 160 years almost, and they, you know, they've got a huge range of colours, reasonably priced, and super, super well behaved, and just about safe. So, like, if you have vintage pens, Diamine are a pretty good option. The last set ink in this set is Wagner, which is a beautiful olive green. Beautiful shading. That darker shading in there is great. The lighter shading, it's all still very readable and very clear, and no sheen, but a really well behaved ink. So that's the inks on Tomoe River paper. And Tomoe River paper, being very fountain pen friendly, shows up the shading and the sheen really nicely. It does tend to mute the colours ever so slightly, but that's across the board with most inks. So let's now look at it on a couple of other kinds of paper. So the next paper I wanted to show this on is standard copy paper. This is not fountain pen friendly paper. This is just your everyday office printer paper. What you can see here is just the range of the colours. Because the colours are a little flatter on this, you do see them quite nicely and clearly. So, you know, we've got like that earthy brown of, you know, Bach. You can see the slight difference in the more reddy brown of Mozart. But all the colours show up really nicely. You can see they perform relatively well. There's a little bit of feathering on this paper, of course. It's not fountain pen friendly paper, so we get a little bit on the Beethoven and a little bit on the Schubert, and a little bit on the Wagner there, but not a huge amount of feathering. As I said, these are well-behaved inks. If you look on the reverse of that, we see there is bleed. It's, again, not fountain pen friendly paper, but once again, Schubert and Beethoven do tend to bleed through a bit more than the others, but generally speaking, you know, it's pretty uniform across the set. But as I said, not fountain pen friendly paper, and you can still see they perform nicely, and I think the colours look really, really good. So then we get Rhodia. Now, this is my Rhodia page where I sort of also do like the tests of the water test of the ink. So we'll go through each on here, and then I want to show a couple of comparisons for each ink as we go. Okay, so we start with Bach. As I said, once again, that sort of earthy brown. Water resistance, it moves around quite a lot, and you're left with a faint line, but not a whole lot left there. For comparisons for this, the best one I came up with was Rustic Brown, which is a little redder. And then if we just compare it to something, say, like Burnt Sienna here, you can see that it's quite a warm, chocolatey brown, which sits nicely sort of in that family. Then we have Beethoven, lovely foresty green, nice shading again. When the water hits this, we get left with the blue, a lot more, like a bluey grey. So not super water resistant, but you still would be able to read what you've got. Best comparison for that is Sherwood green, just so you can see, like, it's a warmer green than Sherwood. Sherwood is quite vibrant in a lot of ways, whereas the nice Beethoven ink there is a little warmer. Then we move to Chopin, and Chopin, as I said, is probably the closest to a blue-black in the set. And if we look at it here next to 1864 blue-black, you see there's a number of like little similarities. This performs relatively well with the water. Once again, it moves around, but you're left with enough detail there, I think, to be able to make out at least what was written on the page. Another comparison for this is Diamine Eclipse. So all the comparisons I'm showing today are Diamine inks, to keep it all within the family, shall we say. But you can see sort of it's got some nice, you know, sheen, and has a nice shading that ties it in with Eclipse there as well. Next is Handel. As I said, this is a unique colour, I think, for me at least, in the Diamine collection. I'll put it here alongside Syra, which is one of the closest and one of my favourite inks. Once again, moves around a lot, a little bit of different definition left behind after the water, but just a generally really well behaved ink. When we get to Mozart, this is another one where Rustic Brown is a good comparison, particularly in the darker shades. This one moved around a lot, and you get a little bit less definition left after the water. So not a super water resistant ink. None of these inks are designed to be water resistant or waterproof or permanent or anything like that. They're a little more water resistant than, say, the flower set. So if you're using these for ink art, there's going to be a little less sort of movement on the ink. A couple of them move more than others, but you know, there's just a little bit more sort of staying behind from these inks. Schubert is beautiful. I really love this ink. I'll show this alongside a green and then another sort of aqua teal. But this has a lot that moves around, and you do lose a lot of the definition from this ink with the water. The two comparisons I'm showing once again are Sherwood Green to show that it's a little bit more blue, tealy, and then Aurora Borealis, which is actually quite similar. Aurora Borealis was one that was designed with the Reddit community, and yeah, I think it is quite a close match there to Schubert. Strauss here is, I think, a really beautiful ink. It's a lovely sort of sienna-y, burnt orangey sort of colour. So I thought what I'd do is I'd get out blood orange here, which is a favourite ink of mine, and burnt sienna. So you can see sort of where it sits. It's perhaps a little pinkier than burnt sienna when you see them next to each other, but it's not quite as orange as, say, a blood orange. In terms of water resistance, it moves around a lot. You do get a tiny bit of definition in some of the lines, but some are completely eradicated. So I think it really depends on, you know, the how much ink you're putting down in the first place, as it does with a lot of these inks. Tchaikovsky is next, lovely blue, sort of got a hint of sort of sapphire-y purple to it occasionally, some nice little bit of sheen, decent sort of water resistance in terms of being able to actually still read what is left behind, so that's good. And a couple of comparisons, I thought I'd put Royal Blue and Majestic Blue there. It's a little darker than Majestic, but you get some sheen on it as well, and it's obviously not as vibrant there as Royal Blue. The final two here, once again, we've got Vivaldi. So I'll pull up the same two blue-black options. There's a bit more violet in this, which is why it ties in nicely a bit with like Eclipse, which has a nice sort of blue tone to it, and then 1864 blue-black. So nice vibrant colours, not vibrant, sorry, nice rich colours. And I think this has a nice hint of grey to it, but when you put water on it, of course, you get a lot of sort of the purple coming through, that light violet sort of colour. And it's a nice one, actually. I think, once again, not a huge lot left behind in terms of definition, but I think you could still make that out. And then the last ink in the set is Diamine Wagner. Now, I really couldn't find anything that matched this in my Diamine collection. There are a few other things like Rohrer und Klingner's Alt Goldgrün and a couple of Gerben like Vert Olive, but the Wagner in that olive green, I couldn't find anything in my selection from Diamine, and I don't have everything. I would love everything. I don't have everything, but this one did, in my collection, was a little bit unique. So what I did was I just put up a sort of a yellowish ink in amber there, and something like an earthy olive green like salamander there. So it's very like lighter yellowy green, as opposed to sort of a darker green, or even close. It's not even close to a yellow. This left behind a grey line. But a lot of the ink was completely removed. These lighter colours do tend to do that a bit more. So, but that dark grey is still readable. And like all of these would be somewhat readable after the water, but not ideal. You know, I think Diamine are not making in these inks waterproof inks. So the idea would be to sort of maybe keep them away from water if you are wanting to keep your writing. If you look at it up close, we see that on the Diamine, on the rodeo paper, they all perform really well. There's no bleeding. No feathering, sorry. You know, Rhodia is a fountain pen friendly paper, but even, you know, disastrous inks go bad on this paper, but these are all performing really nicely. And on the reverse, even where we put down the swabs of ink, we're not getting a whole lot coming through. So, you know, as I said, Diamine are well-behaved, safe inks. Pulp Addiction here in Australia, as I said, they bundle these up into like the little sample set, and they also sell the standard 30ml bottles of these inks, which are the refill bottles. They don't yet retail the actual boxed set of the inks. That set retails for around the 100 American mark from most sort of retailers. It is 10 bottles of ink, 10 30ml bottles of ink. So you are getting a lot of ink for that, and it's presented nicely. But there's, the normal 30ml plastic bottles from Diamine are sold through Pulp Addiction, and they are $12.95 Australian per bottle, which I think is actually one of the better prices I've seen for them outside of the UK. Places like Colt Pens, being in the UK, have great prices on Diamine as well. But in Australia, Pulp Addiction is one of the better priced retailers. So for the standard non-music settings, for instance, the 30ml bottle is $8.95 and the 80ml bottle is $19.95. Pulp Addiction do the samples, and they're $2.95 each for the 2ml sample vial. They will be putting this set up, as I said. As it stands right now, it's not up, but generally what has happened is that the price of the set is a couple of dollars less than the price of buying the 10 sample vials individually. So it's a pretty good deal, and it gives you a chance to try a nice range of colors and a nice sort of, nice quality performing inks. And at a really reasonable price and with great service. So if you're not familiar with Pulp Addiction, check them out. I think they're really worth looking at as a company. But this is the Diamine music set. As I said, 10 inks named after composers: Bach, Beethoven, Chopin, Handel, Mozart, Schubert, Strauss, Tchaikovsky, Vivaldi, and Wagner. So if these are of interest to you, check out Pulp Addiction, get your samples, and thanks for watching. I hope you found this video interesting and useful. If you did, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Hit the notifications button if you want to stay up to date with the videos that I produce. Please feel free to get in touch using any of the platforms listed below. You can find me on Instagram or Twitter at @the_offstage_me, or you can contact me in any of my videos here, or drop me an email, which is listed down below. If you've got products you think I should be looking at, or if there's a way you'd like to support the channel, please get in touch. It's your support that makes this channel possible. In the meantime, enjoy your inks, enjoy your writing, and I'll talk to you soon.